Hey, Dylan, why is Jane upside down?
She's not
Jane,
upside down.
Jane is upside down on my screen.
She's right side up on mine.
You, Richard, Diane, Marianne, myself, all good. But Jane's good. She's upside down, but she's good. Yeah, she's very upside down, actually.
I don't know. I'm on my phone, maybe that's why, I don't know.
Very strange.
Jay, when you moved it earlier, it went sideways on my screen, so it probably is the phone. Give it one more minute. All right. Well,
Susan, are you at Village Hall? Are you at Village Hall? I can't hear her.
Not coming in.
Oh,
Your mic's not coming in, Susan.
I'm so jealous she gets to be in public.
She's not at Village Hall.
Not?
No. It's a disguise.
Ah,
It's not working. We can't hear you.
We'll have to read Susan's lips tonight.
We'll be out of here in 10 minutes. She can't even say anything.
now. Gotta be nice to each other.
I love you, Susan. I know.
Still can't hear you. You might want to check the audio settings.
Check your mic. Make sure the selected mic is correct. Now you're muted.
Don't tie your shoe, please.
If you by the mic, Susan, there's a little up arrow, and there should be one that says select a microphone.
So.
Nope.
No.
Maybe she should just sign out and sign back in.
No, because she's got a connection. It's not seeing her mic for some reason. Jane's getting me dizzy. She just left.
Give her a minute to get back on.
That was TNR.
All right. Maybe I'll do the preliminary stuff, just then she'll log back on. All right, this is a planning board public meeting, Tuesday, January 19, 2021. It's approximately 7:38 p.m. right now. For the duration of the coronavirus health emergency, Village Hall is closed to the public and meetings are held with the participants at remote locations, connecting to the conferencing software provided by Zoom.us. Members of the public are invited to view meetings live using Zoom client, which also allows them to raise a hand and contribute with voice and video when they are invited to do so during public portions of the meeting. in accordance with the provisions of Section 10:4-8D of the Open Public Meetings Act, the date, location, and time of the commencement of this meeting is reflected in a meeting notice, a copy of which schedule has been filed with the village manager and the village clerk, the Ridgewood News, and the Record newspapers, and posted on the bulletin board in the entry lobby of the village municipal offices at 131 North Maple Avenue, and on the village website, all in accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Okay, flag salute. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
of
of the United States of America
America and to
and
the
to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and
and
justice for
justice
all.
for all. Okay, a roll call, Jane.
Mayor Newton,
And we'll just note that she signed
Okay.
up before and she'll be coming back on. She had technical
Okay.
difficulties.
Chief Ngor,
Here.
Councilwoman Reynolds,
Here.
Richard Joel,
Here,
Diane O'Brien,
Here.
Melanie Hoban,
Here.
Debbie Paturi, Fran Bartow,
Here.
Allison Westner,
Here.
Darlene Johnson, Igor Labarsky.
Here.
okay, we have a quorum and can proceed. The first item on the agenda is public comments on topics not pending before the board. If anyone in the gallery wants to make a public comment, they can raise their hand and then they'll be invited in, and they can state their name and address and then make a comment.
I'm showing none.
Okay. All right, there's no public comments provided. Our next item will be committee, commission, professional updates for non-agenda topics. Does anyone have anything to report? Okay, seeing there's nothing to report. Jane, have we received any correspondence?
No.
No? Okay. All right, our first item on the first application on the agenda will be the Garber Building LLC, 2-4 Garber Square, Block 3801, Lot 3, application for minor site plan approval and parking variance relief to permit restaurant and inn. This was carried from January 5, 2021, without further notice and without prejudice to the board. And on this application, I guess the attorney is Dave Rutherford. We can let him in. And then he can indicate who else to let in.
Okay, I just want to indicate that I'm not eligible to participate in this application since I live within 200 feet of 24 Garber Square.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Clarence.
Dylan, you can remove Fran off the screen. Okay.
Well, she just she muted herself and then turned off her video.
Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Good evening to all of you. Dylan, please, we have two witnesses that I need to have join me.
Okay.
First is my client, Jonathan Steingraber,
Okay.
and the second is our professional witness, Michael Maris. And I see that the court reporter has already joined, so thank you for that.
I'm starting to remember.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so I see Mr. Steingraber, I see Mr. Maris. Great. Thank you very much, members of the board. Again, good evening. I appreciate your time and attention to our matter this evening. Again, for the record, David L. Rutherford appearing on behalf of the Garber Building LLC. Just by way of brief opening statement, because I know you have a busy agenda and we're going to try to be expeditious this evening. As Mr. Joel just indicated, my client requests minor site plan approval and a parking variance. We're looking to modify the Corsa building. You're all familiar with it. It's a local landmark, just a very beautiful and important building in the village for use as a restaurant with a liquor license on the first floor and a 6-room inn on the second floor. We have had consultation with the assistant zoning official and with the village planner, and it is determined that both uses are permitted. Restaurants are obviously permitted in Ridgewood, but inns are also specifically referred to as a permitted use in the B1 zone. We think that this is a wonderful use for the village. It does not feature at the present time any facility, to my knowledge, providing overnight accommodations, and something that is a long time in coming. The basement is going to contain restrooms, primarily for patrons of the restaurant, office and storage space, and a prep kitchen. The village planner has determined that site plan approval is required and a parking variance. Based upon the size of the building and applying the ratio in the ordinance of 1 space per 300 square feet, 30 spaces are required. And the planner has determined that the proposed use of a part of the basement by the applicant, the balance is used by another tenant, increases the existence requirements by 10 spaces, hence the need for a variance. I'll point out the obvious. I'm sure you're all familiar with the property. This property features no parking spaces, 0. There's not a single parking space on this property. So we're seeking a variance of 10, 30 are required, and we have none. It's just an existing condition. And I would point out, not necessarily unusual in the CBD. There are a number of properties that feature no parking or certainly inadequate parking in the central business district.
Dylan, could you let Debbie Patirian, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. And I'd like to note that Mayor Newsom also joined us.
Thank you. I'll wait a minute. I see Mayor Knudsen,
Okay.
and I think Ms. Patiri is here.
Thanks, Melanie. I'm sorry. I've been on for about 10 minutes. I was just in the waiting room. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The first and second floors of this building have always been devoted to permitted uses for many, many years. The basement has also been actively used, but will now be used for activities that are supportive of and accessory to the restaurant and the inn. I will point out that there is no dining space proposed for the basement. And as I indicated earlier, guests will access the basement only for the purpose of using the restrooms. There are no guest rooms or other gathering areas in the basement. It's devoted only to staff use. So in short, my client comes before the board simply seeking to use a building which features no parking for permitted uses. And just like those other properties, my client will be required to rely upon public parking and whatever other arrangements can be made, and will operate the business accordingly. I wrote to the board on December 23rd, 2020, in advance of the January 5th, 2021 meeting, asking that only the parking variance be considered this evening. Once approved, and I'm hoping the board will feel comfortable in moving forward tonight and will look favorably upon the request for the parking variance, we will return with the site plan. Some changes are needed to the plans that have been filed with the board to address site plan issues, including those raised in the memo of the village planner dated October 26, 2020. So I'm going to offer some fairly brief testimony this evening from Mr. Steingraber, who is a principal of the applicant, just to give the board an idea of the nature of the use, flesh out a little bit what I just said in my opening statement, and then Mr. Maris is prepared to address the parking issues. So unless the board has any questions or concerns of me, I'd like, if you please, to have Mr. Steingraber sworn.
Thank you, Mr. Rutherford. Just as a threshold matter, Chair, is the board satisfied with bifurcating this so it's just a parking variance tonight?
Yeah, I'm satisfied. Does anyone have any input on that? All right.
Good, good. And David, just so the board can follow, because the only thing on tonight is the parking variance. You're saying 30 spaces are required. There are no spaces available, but you need 10 spaces. Could you just clarify that for the board so they can follow along with the testimony?
Yes, I believe the village planner can certainly speak for herself, but her review memo, I think, linked the active use of the basement to require an additional 10 spaces, because we do propose uses down there, as I indicated in my opening, that are accessory to the permitted uses, be it storage space, linen space, office, prep kitchen, things of that nature. And I believe it was the active use of the basement in those ways that served, I'll say, to increase the parking requirement and to include the 10 spaces that are otherwise attributable to the basement to be included in the calculation, therefore requiring the applicant to come before the board for a variance. The village planner, Ms. Bucci-Carter, I encourage you to speak if I misspoke that or if I've misstated that in any way. I believe that was your rationale for determining that a parking variance was required.
Yes, and it's fairly straightforward in the report. So I don't have any disagreement with that.
Okay, Marianne, it's confusing, quite frankly. Is it 30 spaces? Is it 40 spaces? They're none provided. So what does this board ask to do? I just want to make sure that they have the roadmap for that.
Okay. So I'm sorry if I have my my report up on the screen, so I can't see you for a second.
No, that's okay. I was just looking for David just to clarify, 30 or 40 spaces are we looking for a variance for?
Yeah, I can answer that if you wish, Mr. Martin. On page 2 of Ms. Bucci-Carter's report under section 3, where it says variance is required, she cites section 190-121 of the ordinance, and it says a minimum of 1 parking space per 300 square feet of gross floor area is required, or a total 30 total parking spaces for the site. Approximately 10 of these spaces are newly required due to the basement being converted from storage to part of the restaurant above. No parking spaces currently exist or are being proposed. So the way I would look at that is the 20 spaces, so to speak, attributable to the first and second floor are essentially an existing nonconformity. Since the applicant is proposing to use the basement, an additional 10 spaces are required, and that's what brings the applicant to the board.
Marianne, that's how I read it. Do you read it that way?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Steingraber, can you raise your right hand, please? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Welcome. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Rutherford, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Steingraber, could you just turn up the volume a little bit on your mic if you could? I hesitate to mess with success here, but I think we might be able to hear you just a little bit better.
Can you hear me better?
That's better. Yes, thank you so much. Mr. Steingraber, you are a member of the applicant Garber Building LLC, is that correct?
Yes.
And the Garber Building LLC is the owner of the property that we're concerned with this evening?
Correct.
When did you acquire the property?
June 26, 2019. Happens to be my daughter's birthday, but she was born this year or last year.
Yeah, you can remember. Unlike many of us, you can remember the date you acquired the property. Yes.
Exactly.
I get it. And I made a brief opening statement, Mr. Steingraber, and was what I said in there accurate? And if there was anything that I said wrong, could you correct that, please?
No, it was all accurate.
Okay. And I indicated that you're proposing a restaurant for the first floor that includes a liquor license. Is that correct?
Yes, and that was already acquired.
Okay, you've already acquired a liquor license. I think you have told me that it's the license that was formerly owned by the Elks Club on North Maple Avenue in Ridgewood.
Correct.
And that's a plenary consumption license, correct?
Yep, Broad Sea. We got lucky, I guess.
Open to the public, okay. And the plans that we filed with the board, and for the board's benefit, we will have testimony from Mr. Rosenberg when we return for the site plan approval. But
Yes.
for now, you're proposing a 48-seat restaurant on the first floor. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that the plans show seats at a bar and at tables on the first floor.
Yes. Am I allowed to share my screen at all or no?
Sure you can. I think you can. Mr. Martin and Mr. Joel, is that acceptable? Here we go. All right, so why don't we?
That's actually very helpful. You want to mark it as A1?
Yes, thank you.
So this is a rendering of the exterior, and to answer your question, yes, some seats will be at the bar. This isn't exactly what the final cosmetics of what it's going to look like, but it's just a draft plan. It's going to be a really pretty place, and it's not going to be called the Bar Honey.
Good.
Not sure why it's going to be called Corsa Inn, as far as we're concerned right now, because we want to keep the name historically with the building, and we love the fact that it's a historic building, and we want to kind of stick with that theme.
So Mr. Steingraber, you had a rendering, right? We'll mark that as Exhibit A1. And just tell us very briefly how that rendering was prepared and who did it.
I had, we're in the real estate business, so I have somebody that does a lot of 3D renderings. They're actually they're in the Philippines, so I can get you their information if you'd like. It's in my phone. But I just gave them some ideas of what it is that we are looking to do, with some pictures of other bars and restaurants that we really like cosmetically, and then we gave them some photos of our current building that we got professionally photographed, and they developed this concept plan, and we made some changes, and this is what we came up with so far. And once we get through the site plan, if we get to that point, then we will be making some changes, but it gives you a good visual.
So we've marked, Mr. Steingraber, you've displayed to the board 4 renderings. Just go through them slowly again. A1, just for the record, is a shot of the building from across the street, looking at the corner of the building, I guess. A2 looks to be on the, the south side of West Bridgewood Avenue, looking across West Bridgewood Avenue. A3 is an interior depiction of a proposed or possible interior. Correct? And then A4, I think there was one more. Right, A4 is a photo of a bar. And we made it clear that's not going to be the name, and it may not even look like this, but you're intending it to show the board, to give them an idea of what you have planned for this property. Is that correct?
Yeah, my wife will be, I'm sure, choosing the final finishes along with the designer, Vanessa De Leon.
Okay. And one of the renderings that you had showed tables outside, and you do envision in the warmer months to have tables outside. I indicated in my opening the restaurant features 48 seats on the inside. You believe the outside can accommodate up to 36 seats. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's a combination of seats on your property, because you have a fair amount of space on the easterly side of the building on the corner there, and perhaps also in the public right-of-way pursuant to the Village's Sidewalk Cafe ordinance, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I indicated in my opening that the basement is not going to feature dining space. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's only going to be for the restrooms, for an office, a prep kitchen, and storage.
Okay. And to clarify, there are 2 tenants in the building at the present time. And while those exact tenants may not remain, the plan is that those tenant spaces would continue to be operated by tenants. And you're showing us A1, and I see your cursor in the storefront that's on the west side of the building. I think that's currently a salon, a hair salon. Am I correct?
Haru Salon, yes.
Yes, okay. And then there's also another tenant space on the building that's to the right of the main entrance. I'll call it on Garber Square, facing to the east. And that tenant space also would remain.
Yes, that's the tailor shop.
Okay, and they occupy just the first floor.
The hair salon has a little portion of the basement. Yes.
Correct. I'm sorry. That's a correct answer. My question was imprecise. What I was thinking is that they don't occupy any part of the second floor, is what I was thinking about.
They do not. The second floor is currently completely vacant.
Okay. All right, they're going to stay. We talked about 36 seats outside and where those will be. Okay, and then for the second floor, you're proposing a 6-room inn. And maybe you can tell the board a little bit about what you envision with respect to the inn, the clientele you hope to serve, what you're looking to accomplish with that.
Yes, so it's interesting. When I went to the master plan meeting in Ridgewood, it was a few months after we acquired this building. I just went to get involved and brainstorm with what the city was looking for. And at that time, I had sat down at a table with the former mayor, and they were talking about a lot of different issues. And I told him I had acquired this building, and he said, one of the things that you might want to consider is an inn. And I said, oh, I never really looked into that. Inn, by definition, is a bar restaurant with overnight accommodations, right? So I went to see if the zoning allowed for that. I've always wanted to start a bar restaurant. I manage a lot of properties, including some short-term rental properties. And I'm very big into hospitality. I ran a bar in downtown Manhattan for a few years. And I thought that this would be a perfect building, perfect corner, perfect location across the street from the train, and in a perfect town, perfect location, because as far as I could tell, there was no overnight accommodations in the immediate area. I've had multiple conversations with a few of the restaurateurs, Glenn from Steel Wheel, Frank Cretella from Felina, and specifically Frank Cretella was like, wow, this is amazing. I have a venue, if you get overnight accommodations, I'll be sending people your way. And I just feel like it's a perfect location, because a lot of people that go to the inn are taking public transportation, and it being directly across the street from the train, I think that works really well. And it's, it's not huge, right? It's six, they're going to be 6 luxury boutique rooms with really nice designs, keeping the historical character. We have some of the moldings and everything already picked out. The doors, solid doors and things like that, making it really beautiful. So, I don't know what questions everybody has here. I'm really excited about this project. I think it's something that would be great in Ridgewood. Everybody that I've talked to, they have mentioned that this is something that they would welcome and that they need, and they've been talking about for many years. We acquired the building and I started looking for a liquor license once I decided I wanted to do the inn. And everybody told me I would never get a liquor license in Ridgewood. And I literally did a few Google searches and found out that an Elks had one, and I reached out to them and we ended up, purchasing it. So it feels like this is all meant to happen. And hopefully you guys are all welcoming the idea of an inn in town as well. I know somebody that just recused herself. She lives within 200 yards, I guess. From a public opinion standpoint, I'd like to hear what she thinks about this. But it's, I don't want to go on and rambling, but we're excited about the project.
And just a few more questions, and then Mr. Steingraber, the board will have an opportunity to ask you questions. I just wanted to confirm that the inn is not featuring any ancillary facilities such as a recreational area or a gym or business center or business rooms or anything of that nature. It's really just the 6 luxury rooms on the 2nd floor, obviously a place to greet guests on the 1st floor, and then the bar, restaurant, and then the basement use that we proposed, correct?
Correct.
And what do you anticipate to be, one of the questions I'm sure the board is going to have is, and Mr. Maris is certainly going to address parking needs for the restaurant and the bar, but with respect to the demand for overnight parking by your guests, first of all, what do you anticipate that demand to be, number one? And what arrangements do you expect to be able to make to accommodate those guests who may have cars that need to be parked overnight?
Okay, so first of all, I don't think that we're going to have a huge demand for cars, because most people that are, that I've learned that have stayed in these type of properties overnight when they're traveling, they are not typically bringing their own car. Some people do rent their car, but I don't anticipate having a big demand. But with that being said, there's a lot of different things that we could do. Make deals with private owners. It's not a whole lot of, it's only 6 rooms. The rooms are not going to be fit out for, bringing families, I would say, because they're small. They're not large, and they don't have multiple beds in them. So it's most likely going to be couples with 1 car if they bring one. So the max amount capacity would be 6. So I think that we can either make arrangements to meet guest needs, which would either be with property owners or across the street or in the parking garage.
Okay. You're going to have a staff person overnight, I guess, correct? There will be staff people there during the evening?
Yes,
Overnight, I should be more precise, overnight. Okay.
yes.
And one of the comments of the village planner in her October 26th memo was that long-term lengths of stay would not be permitted so as to avoid the rooms becoming permanent residential units. That's not your intent at all. You expect a transitory, and I use that word in the best sense possible, a transitory clientele. People come and stay for a few nights and are on their way. You don't anticipate any, nor are you encouraging, or is it necessarily designed for long-term stays? Am I correct?
Not at all, no. I mean,
Okay.
somebody might really love us and stay for a week or two, but not more than that, I don't think.
Okay. And again, you said the rooms are relatively small, not suitable for children. There are certainly no amenities for children. They'd be designed primarily for one occupant or perhaps two. That's all.
Correct.
Okay, great. I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. The use is permitted. I wanted the board to understand what's envisioned here and what's contemplated. And I also wanted to set a little bit of a foundation for Mr. Maris's testimony in a few minutes. So that's all I would have of Mr. Steingraber right now. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone from the board have questions for Mr. Steingraber? Okay, seeing there are none. Do the board professionals have any questions for Mr. Steingraber?
I have one question.
Sure.
And it's just a confirmation for something that was in the review. It was indicated that there's no exterior work proposed. I just want to confirm that. And if there is, that's fine too. We would just need to see the details of that and know what that is, but that's why I'm asking now.
Well, we'll definitely have signage within the sign ordinance required. And then the other item that I would say at some point we would like to paint. But I don't, as far as structurally, we will not be changing any of that, no.
Okay, well, the reason I ask is because, especially with restaurants too, there's usually exhaust considerations and maybe other outside utilities, whether it's wiring or anything else attached to the building. If you will need that, we'll need to see that in plan. And obviously, since you're only doing parking now, you'll have time to show that.
Yes, we were told in regards to venting and things of the sort that we would have to add to the plans, and we'll definitely do that.
And I'm not talking just construction plans. It would be for the plans that the planning board sees.
Of course. Yep.
Yes, no, yes, your point is well taken. We're going to have to pay some attention to the dumpster location and the venting and stuff, all those things that you just mentioned. Yes. When I said no site improvements, I think I was probably painting with a little broader brush to understand that we don't involve any, structural additions or changes to the exterior of the building or anything of that nature. That's kind of what I was getting at, but your point is absolutely correct. That's why quite honestly, we wanted to see if we can have the board act favorably on the parking variance and then attend to all those little details in return. And I think we understand, I'm certain is an historic site. So the board, I assume, will also be, performing the function that the Historic Preservation Commission would ordinarily perform with respect to this project. So the answer to all that is yes.
Richard, I have just a couple questions. It's Lorraine.
Yeah, sure.
So Mr. Steingraber, just a couple of quick questions out of curiosity. Have you kind of talked to anybody in the neighborhood to see if anybody would be interested in, I guess, renting out a garage? Is that what you're thinking about? Renting out a garage in the neighborhood or something for overnight spaces or driveways or?
So Tarvin has a lot directly across the street behind the Italian restaurant.
Okay.
And at any given time, they say that they do have available vacancies. So yes, I have talked to a couple of the different owners. I've been in touch with the previous owner of the building on the corner, which I forget exactly the address of the property, but it's down the block on the left that sits on that corner right there. It was the big apartment a big office building, 9,000 square feet with 22 parking spaces. I imagine after 5 or 6 p.m., people leave that space. And I'm trying to get in touch with the current owner because that building was recently sold during, all this craziness that's been happening with COVID, and to see if they would be willing to rent out some of those spots. So yeah, I think there's plenty of availability, especially at the peak hours.
Okay. And have you had any contact at all with residents in the area? Like, that people that live there, do you have any idea what their feelings are?
No, I haven't. Most of this area here is, as you know, mostly commercial. There is an apartment building behind our building, but no, I have not been in touch with, I've talked to some people in town, but I don't know exactly where they live. So.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any further questions of Mr. Steingraber by the board or board professionals? Okay, does anyone from the public have any questions for Mr. Steingraber? Okay.
I'm showing none.
Okay. All right, Dave, you can call next witness.
Yeah, then my next witness will be Michael Maris, please. He was admitted earlier, I believe.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Steingraber.
Mr. Maris, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Mr.
Raise your
Maris,
right hand, please.
thank you.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And you are a traffic and parking consultant, correct?
Yes, I am, sir.
With approximately 50 years of experience?
Yes.
And you've been
53 years.
qualified for many planning boards in the past, including most recently this Ridgewood Planning Board, correct?
Quite a few, yes, sir.
And tonight you are so qualified as a traffic and parking consultant. Mr. Rutherford, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, before I forget, Mr. Martin, I'd like to mark Mr. Maris's parking study. It's dated December 31st, 2020, and we'll mark that as Exhibit A5, if you please.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Rutherford.
Thank you. And you've established Mr. Maris's qualifications, so I'm going to let him proceed in narrative form, just in the interest of proceeding expeditiously. So, Mr. Maris, I'd like you to just go through your report with the board, discuss with the board what your task was, what you did to prepare your report, the information that you gathered, and then the conclusions that you drew.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. We were retained to, as you heard, this particular building has no parking whatsoever. So whoever is going to occupy the space in question today will have to park off-site. And we were requested to determine first how many parking spaces will be required, and second, whether there are sufficient parking spaces within reasonable walking distance to accommodate the building's needs. Normally, when we do this, and I believe I indicated the same thing before, we look at a walking area of about 1,000 feet from the entrance of the building. However, for this particular project, we decided we're not going to do such a large study area. We're just going to look in the immediate vicinity. In fact, we looked at the train station parking lot across Garber Square. There are parking spaces, curb parking spaces in the area. Some of them have different time limitations. So we decided not to count on those, and we excluded them from our study area. And I do want to point out, by excluding them, we are being very conservative, since the more parking spaces you survey, the more vacancies you can get. So by limiting to the parking lot across the street, we really limited the availability of vacant parking spaces. Now, the lot across the street, the train station lot, as you know, has about 3 or 4 different sections, and altogether they total 171 parking spaces. However, those parking spaces obviously are not sitting there waiting for our client to occupy the building and for their customers to park. those spaces are already utilized because of the train station. A lot of them are utilized by commuters, etc. So the key was to identify how many vacant spaces there are there that our client could occupy or his guests and customers could occupy. To do that, we perform parking occupancy surveys, which basically consist of going through the parking lot every hour and counting how many vehicles are parked in the lot. Obviously, if you deduct that from the 171, it tells you how many parking spaces are vacant. Now, the surveys were done on December 12th, it's a Saturday, December 15th, it's a Tuesday, December 19th is another Saturday, and December 21st, a Monday. And the surveys were conducted from 9 a.m., starting at 9 a.m. and finishing at 6 p.m. No, let me correct myself, 9 a.m. and finishing at 9 p.m. So we basically looked at 12 hours, and we went to 9 p.m. Because obviously this is a restaurant, and hopefully it will be successful and have dinner guests. The results of the surveys were the maximum occupancy on the weekdays was 29 vehicles at 1 p.m., which equates to 17% of the available parking spaces. And on Saturday, it was 40 vehicles at 3 p.m., which equates to 23%. I'm familiar enough with Ridgewood that I know those are not realistic numbers. I've driven by that parking lot. I parked in that parking lot on several occasions. And I know that before COVID, there were a lot of commuters using that lot. And so these parking spaces that we surveyed do not reflect the typical and realistic occupancy. So we needed to go look and find other sources that might give us an idea of what the occupancy would be post-COVID and what it was pre-COVID. We found two sources. One was the Walker Parking Study that was done in 2015 in connection to the Hudson Street Garage. Now, that parking study identified a peak accumulation of 135 vehicles during a weekday and 81 vehicles during a Saturday. Two things have happened since that survey. One, the parking lot itself was enlarged. I believe there were about 35 more parking spaces put in that parking lot. The middle of it had a berm with planting, etc., and that has been replaced and it was paved, and there's more parking spaces there than were before. The other thing is the parking garage. That parking garage has taken a lot of the demand, or some of the demand, away from this parking lot. I can remember people, I did it myself, parking in this particular lot and going through the underpass to go to the Central Business District. And now with the garage is closer, and I don't believe that there is a demand for that many people to park in this lot, especially during off-peak hours. The other source that we looked at was Google. I personally love Google. It gives you all kinds of information in it. And when I looked at the Google area, and that was taken, the latest one was taken on June 25th, 2019. It was pre-COVID. And that area, when you count the cars in the parking lot, it's 134 cars. The rest of them were vacant. And it's interesting that they are almost the same as were counted by Walker Parking. Based on that, it was our opinion that 134 car, the demand for that lot is 134 cars, the peak demand, I should say, on a weekday, and 81 cars on a Saturday. we used those numbers to adjust our surveys. In other words, we took the hourly accumulations we had on weekdays and Saturdays, and the weekdays, we increased them by almost 500%. We actually applied a growth factor of 4.62. That gave us what, I can't say it was exact, but they're pretty good estimates of what the accumulations in that lot would have been on a weekday before the COVID pandemic. The Saturday counts, we increased them by 2.03, and that gave us an idea of what the peak Saturdays would be. Now, the way we calculated those factors, basically the peak accumulation that we counted on a weekday was 29. And if one is to assume 134 is the peak demand, you divide it and it comes to 4.62. And we did the same thing for Saturday. When you take the adjusted accumulations on an hourly basis and you compare them to the 171 parking spaces in the lot, we calculated that the minimum vacant spaces on a weekday would be 31, and that would be approximately 1 p.m., which is understandable. Weekdays when you would have the use of the commuter parkers. And we estimated that the peak, the minimum number of vacant spaces on a Saturday would be 90 spaces at about 3 p.m. So that gave us pretty good idea of how many vacant spaces would be available for this proposed project. It was next necessary to estimate how many parking spaces this project would require. It's our process, or the way we do business, we like to be conservative. We estimated while there, as you heard before, there will be a certain 48 seats in the restaurant, and probably during the spring, summer, and maybe parts of fall, there will be 36 outdoor seats. Traditionally, what happens is during the summer when the outdoor seats are being used, you get less seating inside, simply because more people prefer to sit outside than inside. And of course, in the wintertime, nobody wants to sit outside unless there is a rare good day. So you're not going to have all 84 of those seats occupied at any time. However, when we did our parking demand estimates, we assumed that all 84 seats would be occupied. So we estimated a peak parking demand based on 84 seats. And that estimate was made using a study that published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers entitled Parking Generation. And as you may know, that basically that study gives parking factors that you apply to buildings based on number of seats for restaurants and number of rooms for inns. And that tells you how much each of those would require, what the peak requirement is. Now, application, the ITE, or the Institute of Transportation Engineers report, shows that restaurants, and we consider these are high quality restaurants, which is what we consider the proposed restaurant to be. Restaurants require 0.52 parking spaces per seat. And that makes sense when you think about it. Most people who go to dinner, there's two in a car that go together. And so the findings of the Institute of Transportation Engineers are reasonable. That was 0.52 parking spaces per seat on weekdays, and slightly less, a little bit less than a half on Saturdays, 0.46 to be exact. When you apply those factors to the 84 seats, I mean, yes, the proposed 84 seats, we calculated that the restaurant would require 44 parking spaces on a weekday and 39 parking spaces on a Saturday. And this is the number of parking spaces that would be required during the peak hour of the restaurant. Now, the inn is going to be only 6 rooms, which is a relatively small entity. It's not clear where they will park. However, we are aware that the village has an ordinance that permits overnight parking with permit. And I believe that applies to the parking lot across the street, the train station. There's a sign there that says overnight parking by permit. It's an official sign, and so I'm assuming that that you can park over there if you have a permit. Nonetheless, what we did was we estimated the number of parking spaces that would be required by the inn based on other factors also supplied by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And we concluded that the inn would require 5 spaces on a weekday and 4 spaces on a Saturday or the weekend. Well, those numbers that I just gave you are for the peak hour. We wanted to see the parking accumulations of the 2 components of the application, the restaurant and the inn, on an hourly basis. And we used additional data published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which gives you hourly variations of what the peak generation hour would be. So basically, if the peak generation hour is, let's say, for example, 10, and the hourly variation is 0.8, that means that during that hour, that particular use requires 8 parking spaces. That is called a shared parking analysis. And we applied the factors in the ITE publication to the peak hour of the generator, the numbers I gave you before. And basically, and then we combine the 2. We assume that the inn people are going to park in the garage. If they park somewhere else in the target and everything, then that's another conservative component of our study. When we combine the 2 of them, we calculated that the 2 uses would have a peak demand of 47 parking spaces at 7 p.m. on a weekday and 42 parking spaces at 8 p.m. on a Saturday. Again, these numbers make sense, the hours, etc., because we're talking about a restaurant and an inn. When we compare those to the reduced vacancies, if you recall, I had adjusted all our occupancies, the reduced vacancies, we concluded that during each hour of a weekday and a Saturday, there will be sufficient on-site, sufficient vacant spaces in the train station parking lot to serve the needs. In fact, during the 7 p.m. of a weekday, when the proposed project will have its peak demand, after subtracting those number from the vacant spaces, we estimated that there will still be about 68 vacant spaces in the train station. A similar calculation was done for Saturday, and we estimated that there will be 76 vacant spaces on Saturday at that hour. I do want to point out that the vacancies were lower at the estimates for the daytime hours on a week. So weekday vacancies will be somewhat lower, but still there will be more than sufficient to serve the proposed project, and there will still be vacant spaces left for potential other uses. That pretty much summarizes our study and our conclusions. So,
Just a few questions, Mr. Maris, before I turn you over to the board. The study is conservative for a number of reasons. The first, I think you indicated right at the beginning of your testimony, is that the available parking area, the radius, was reduced to 300 feet instead of the customary 1,000 feet, correct?
it was reduced to one, not only 300 feet, but one parking lot.
Right, to the train station. It does not take into account the impact that the Hudson Street parking garage may have on demand for the train station lot, correct? We haven't really considered the Hudson Street garage in your analysis.
We did not reduce the numbers to reflect the Hudson Street garage. However, the numbers that we observed were pretty low to begin with. So that's why we increased them.
Okay, and that's right. That's the other thing, is that you did adjust the numbers that you acquired during your visits to the site, to the property in December, to the train station parking lot in December, to provide for a more reasonable estimate of demand. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Or availability, I should say more precisely. You've also assumed that for purposes of calculating the parking requirements of the restaurant, you've assumed that all 84 seats would be in use at any given time, correct?
Correct.
And we understand that the use of the outdoor seats obviously are seasonal, at least in normal times they're seasonal, not so much perhaps anymore, but in normal times they are indeed seasonal. And that also doesn't take into account that in many instances in the summer, folks may decide to eat outside instead of inside. So it's the same party, it's just that they're outside instead of inside, not necessarily more patrons. So obviously we wish our client much success, but you've been conservative in that way as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think that's all. I think that's all I had, Mr. Chairman, for Mr. Maris. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Do any board members have questions for Mr. Maris?
I do, actually, yes. So, Mr. Maris, thank you for your comprehensive report. I just wanted to know, could you just go over where you allocated parking for staffing?
The surveys, the data by the Institute of Transportation Engineers includes employees and the total trip generations. It includes guests and employees.
And what was the number of staff members that we accounted for? Do you know?
No, the data is based on seats. And it basically what they did was they went to different restaurants of the same category, and they surveyed the accumulated cars in the parking lot, and they related that to the number of seats. So for one restaurant, they calculated X amount of parking spaces per seat. For another one, they calculated Y, and there might have been maybe 50 different surveys, and they balanced the numbers, they averaged them out. So because the survey was done of all the vehicles in the parking lot of the restaurant, obviously the employees were already parked over there, and includes employees, yes.
So would you suggest that, are you suggesting that that's applicable to this type of restaurant, or would that be somebody who's developing a site plan where that parking lot is kind of an open question?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question there.
In other words, if the data is supported by going to different restaurants of similar size and counting the number of vehicles in a parking lot, presumably that parking lot belongs to the restaurant. Would that be fair?
It's correct. However, I just want to, I apologize, I didn't make.
No, I just wanted to be able to finish my question. I know you know, I know you know where I'm going with this, so I guess I'll let you go ahead. You got what I'm saying.
I wasn't clear in that when I said by restaurant category, I did not mean the size of the restaurant. it was the type of service the restaurant provided. For example, they give you different demands for fast food restaurants like at McDonald's, different demands for what they call takeout type of restaurants where you order, you pick up your food. Sometimes you order and they pick it up, you eat in or you go out. And they give you different ones for what they refer to as quality restaurants, which was the kind of restaurants that families would go in and sit down, order full service and eat. And this is what we think best describes this proposed restaurant. So it's not the size that's the variable, it's the type of service provided that's the variable.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna just hold right there. Anybody else have questions?
And let me apologize for interrupting you.
No, no, it's okay.
Anyone else have questions for Mr. Maris?
Not sure if Susan asked how many staff are expected. I mean, obviously it will be around the clock staff, but at any given time. Did we discuss staffing? I know you said where they park, but how many are we discussing?
I believe Mr. Steingraber can address that better than I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, why don't we have him do that? I just think I think we all recognize that the parking demand figures that Mr. Maris used include staff, right, Mr. Maris? It includes staff and
yes,
and customers, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But that's fine. I'm happy to have Mr. Steingraber answer your question if he can. Mr. Steingraber, I'm going to ask you to. Do I still see him? There he is. Yeah, unmute yourself, please. And I'll state for Mr. Steingraber that, you know, he's going to do the best he can. You know, it's not totally certain yet, but Mr. Steingraber, you have business experience in the industry. Maybe you can answer the question as to what you think you're going to need in terms of staffing.
Sure. So we are going to be full service. So when you're talking about a hostess, there's going to be probably 3 to 4 waiters, waitresses, a bartender or 2, depending on how busy it is. So you're looking at, you know, the max that you're looking at with chefs and cooks is about 10. But it could be as low as 5. So anywhere between 5 to 10 would probably be appropriate. And if we're super busy, we want to have, you know, the best customer service as possible as far as waiting on tables. I know just like you guys, when you go to a restaurant, you don't want to be waiting too long to get serviced. So if we are successful and we have a full house, then, you know, maybe we'll have one more waiter or waitress on staff as well.
How many people overnight? 1 or 2?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the bar restaurant will close down at you know, normal business hours, depending on how busy it is. But yeah, we would have one hostess basically manning the booth right in front of the elevator before you go up to the rooms. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Steingraber on what he just said? Okay. All right, I guess we can go back to.
Well, actually, I have another question though, because it's relative to parking. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. It's relative to parking, although it's not in this mix, and I'm not sure because we're talking about parking, whether this is something we'll be discussing now or later. But with any hotel or inn, presumably we have delivery services, laundering services, and additionally, there's, you know, deliveries that come for food. And what is the plan for that? Or do we want to, is that going to be a different conversation? But I think it's relevant to this.
Well, hopefully they'll be using our in-room dining type of, you know, instead of ordering Domino's or something like that.
No, I don't mean that kind of services. I mean, like delivery, laundering, you know, you have to have laundering, housekeeping, you know, there are services that come with any
food delivery from the outside providers.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would be different. I mean, you know, we used to have up until just this last month in December, we had people occupying some of the offices. So if they ordered takeout or anything like that, I haven't really thought about that. Maybe Mr. Maris can.
I think she
attempt
means
to-
somebody
No,
like
I
a
don't
food
think-
distributor, like a linens distributor, somebody that's or a food
Oh.
distribution service that brings large quantities, throughout the week and bar liquor deliveries, et cetera.
Got it. Yes.
I'm going to assume your food is going to be really good. Nobody's going to be ordering takeout. So, yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
Okay.
As far as delivery trucks, kegs, beer,
Yeah.
food delivery. Okay, now I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean that's certainly something that we're going to have to manage. Obviously, you're not going to park on Garber. You'll park on West Ridgewood Ave. We do have 15-minute parking. There's 3 parking spots, if I'm remembering correctly, directly in front of us, which serves the perfect purpose to get out and drop everything off, and they can go down the basement entrance, which that's where we're going to be receiving all of our deliveries. They're not going to be going through the main entrance, and they would be going down and delivering and then coming back up. So those are in and out spots. There's only 15-minute spots right there. So I think that'll be perfect for that. If they're occupied, then I'm not really sure what they would do at that point. I'm not really sure.
We can ask the folks up the street because they deal with the same La Lanterna, I'm sure addresses the same issues, so.
Oh, yeah.
David, I just want to add one other point about the deliveries. They usually happen during off-peak hours. They usually happen, they're not going to be delivering foods to be cooked during while customers are there. So they usually happen early in the morning, and I don't think anybody delivers late at night, but normally my experience is that they happen early in the morning.
Yes.
Any further questions for Mr. Steingraber? Okay, thanks. All right, we'll continue with Mr. Maris. Did anyone have any questions for Mr. Maris regarding his testimony? Okay, do we have board professionals that have any questions of Mr. Maris?
Speak versus microphone's not on.
What's that?
No, Rich.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the public for Mr. Maris? You can just raise your hand, and then Dylan will let you in. Then you state your name and address, and then you can ask questions of Mr. Maris on anything that he testified to.
I'm showing none.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Maris.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have any further witnesses?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I guess for our board experts, I guess, Marianne, you want to just start off just to give a summary a little bit on your report as it relates to parking? Oop, you're muted. There you go.
Hold on a second. Now I'm frozen. Just getting my report up in front of me, unfortunately. Okay.
Marianne, while you're doing that, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
And Mr. Rutherford, like we do every week, do you stipulate to Ms. Bucci Carter as a professional planner for the village?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
It's going to be hard to separate out everything and my comments and just keep them focused on parking. Well, we'll try and do that. I obviously, this is a wonderful building, and the site it's actually sits on the site in Garber Square in a very attractive way. Part of the reason why that is so attractive is because there is no parking in the building. It's the trade-off between having a beautiful historic district. You don't have the parking. Obviously, you want the exciting uses in the building. I think the analysis that was provided accommodates, skillfully accommodated, trying to get the true information on the post or pre-COVID demand. And did show that there is capacity within the village to serve this use, and it seems like it would be a wonderful addition as well, and it is, after all, permitted use. So I don't have anything more on that. I think that just additional details that I spoke about earlier for the functioning of the use itself, but that's not parking, so that's all I have to say.
Okay. Chris Rutterhauser, do you have any questions? Anything you want to add to the application?
Just a couple minor clarification points, if I may.
Sure.
Chris, can I just raise your right hand, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And Mr. Rutherford, stipulate to Mr. Ruttershauser as a professional engineer for the village?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Mr. Maris, when you looked over at the Hudson Street garage, did you perchance measure how far away it is from the proposed inn?
No, so we did not consider the Hudson Street garage as a potential use for the inn. If it is used for overnight parking, we don't think anybody's going to park there and come to the restaurant for dinner. But if it is used for overnight parking, we would anticipate that one of two things will be done. I mean, these are details that have to be straightened out once the inn is in operation. But the guests can park over there, their car there, and the inn operator could go and pick them up, or they could bring their car to the inn and the inn operator can drive the car to the garage if that is where it needs to be parked. But to respond to your question directly, we did not measure the distance. No.
Do you feel the distance is within a tolerable range for someone to stay at the inn and leave their car in the Hudson garage?
Well, let me tell you what I would do. I wouldn't do it on a day like today, but during the spring or summer, it's a pleasant walk. So I might walk it, but if I have luggage, that obviously will come up in my decision making. So I would probably would prefer personally to drive to the door of the inn and have them park my car for me. That would be my choice. But there's other alternatives. People fly every day and the hotels go and pick them up from the airports and bring them to the hotel. So there's many alternatives, assuming that Mr. Steingraber is not able to make a deal with any private entities that are close by within walking distance.
Okay, thank you very much. Nothing further.
Okay, thanks.
So I do have actually another question.
Yep, sure.
So presently, our ordinance permits overnight parking passes to residents. Is that, Chris?
That is correct, Mayor.
So we don't provide any accommodation for temporary guests on an overnight parking pass. Is that correct?
That's the way I understand the ordinance, but you and your colleagues in the council can change that if you see fit.
Yes, I know, actually. I know we can change it. I'm just, I only asked that question because it is surprising to me that the parking garage or the train station lot would be discussed as the overnight, potential overnight parking solution when in fact there's no ordinance to allow that. And I only put that out there because it would be something that may impact what you're looking at. Mr. Rutherford might want to take a look at our village code.
Yeah, no, I am familiar with it, Madam Mayor. It's section 265-36, which talks about permit overnight parking. And I acknowledge that it talks about, Mr. Maris did his best based upon the signage that he saw, but Mr. Steingraber's testimony, I think, still remains that absent some change in the ordinance, perhaps my client may want to approach the mayor and council to discuss some arrangements in that regard, either in the train station parking lot or the Hudson Street garage. As Mr. Maris said, there could be an arrangement whereby an employee of the inn would ferry a car back and forth to the garage and permit overnight parking, perhaps on one of the upper levels, which I think is where it is now. You clearly know better than me about that for sure. So I think our bottom line here is that Mr. Steingraber is pretty confident for the reasons expressed based upon the demands and the needs of his guests, as well as his ability to make alternate arrangements with private property owners in the area. He's going to be able to meet the demand for those folks who want to park overnight. And if he can't, quite honestly, that will be a challenge for him to overcome. And he's satisfied that he's going to be able to overcome that challenge. So, it's not going to be like there's going to be a problem with, his parking shortage is going to be foisted on others in the neighborhood. We don't have overnight parking in Ridgewood anywhere. So, he's going to have to deal with that issue. So we weren't intending to be presumptive. I expect that depending on how it goes, we may be coming to the mayor and council and asking them to consider some sort of a change to the ordinance to address that.
Sure, and I appreciate it, David. I just, as the comments were being made, I just thought it was important to go on the record with the ordinance and how it presently reads so that there's no confusion in that.
Is there not also some sort of method of prohibiting residents from renting out? I don't know if businesses can, but a resident certainly. I'm not sure if I remember how that ended up after the buildings and stuff. I know there were some recent changes to the parking ordinances with homeowners or private businesses leasing out parking.
Right, there would be more of a commercial context because it would be a commercial parking situation that would be needed.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to be clear because I appreciate that Mr. Maris made the comment and I thought I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that you did. Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Professionals? Okay, Dave, did you have any questions from our professionals?
No, I do not. And when the appropriate time, I just have some very brief closing comments.
Okay, sure. Anyone from the public have any questions for the board professionals at all? Just raise your hand and then you'll be let in.
I'm showing none.
Okay. All right. I guess next would be if there's anyone from the public that wants to testify at all, just raise your hand, you'll be let in, and then you can testify. You'll be subject to cross-examination. Is there anyone from the public that wants to testify? Just raise your hand. No?
I'm showing none.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone that wants to have public comments? They can also raise their hand and make a comment. Did anyone raise their hand for that?
Nope.
Okay. All right, Dave, you can do a closing statement.
Yeah, thank you. Very briefly. And first of all, again, thank you for your time and attention. I'll just note that these are indeed two permitted uses in the B1 zone, the restaurant and the inn. It's a non-conforming condition in the sense that as the village planner has analyzed this, the first two floors are essentially a non-conforming condition. They've been used this way for many years. Occupants have come and gone, different tenants have come and gone without the need for any parking variance, essentially reflecting a non-conformity. We're here this evening because of the proposal to expand, quote unquote, expand the use into the basement. And that engenders an additional requirement of 10 spaces, which leads to the need for the variance. So I just wanted to kind of keep the variance in context of what it is. That's number one. Number two, we were careful to point out that the use of the basement in and of itself, while it's certainly integral and essential to the use, it is accessory to the use in the sense that the basement is not going to have guest rooms or meeting rooms, banquet rooms, private, dining areas or anything of the sort. It's all ancillary and support to the first floor and the second floor restaurant and the inn. And I don't think that's uncommon at all in Ridgewood. Many establishments in Ridgewood do use the basements because that area provides a space for essential support functions, which for many reasons are not appropriate for the first floor or just aren't going to make the business viable if they have to occupy first floor space. So what we're doing is not unusual. I think Mr. Maris has demonstrated and established nonetheless that this permitted use, there will be sufficient parking to meet the needs of the use. We've talked about the overnight guests. I'll remind the board it is only 6 units, 6 rooms, again, single or double occupancy. Mr. Steingraber expects that a number of his guests will not have cars. They'll arrive by public transportation or perhaps by ride-share services, or I might suggest to you staying with family in Ridgewood. If they have a car, they leave the car at their family member and come back and forth to the inn for the evening. So that I don't think it's going to place an undue parking demand. I think the variance can be supported based upon essentially just the nature of the property. It doesn't feature any parking at all. And without variance relief, this use will not be able to exist because the use of the basement is essential to support the restaurant and the inn. I don't think we're going to create a problem for anyone else. We're in the middle of the central business district. Residential areas are not going to be affected. And to the extent that there is any parking challenges that need to be addressed, the applicant understands that and he's prepared to address them and respond to them. And all that having been said, the use, while we're not here for a use variance, the in use, I would suggest to you, is a very beneficial and desirable use for Ridgewood. I've been in Ridgewood a long time. We've been talking about an inn in Ridgewood for many years. This is a very modest one. It's not going to create any undue demands on village services. And it's going to be in a historic building that, as Mr. Steingraber indicated, is going to be substantially improved and preserved and maintained and enjoyed by residents and visitors and customers alike for many years to come. So I think it's a very meritorious application. I'd ask the board to act favorably upon it. As we indicated earlier in conversation with the village planner, we will be back with respect to site plans so that the board can be comfortable with the changes that are going to need to be made to the building to accommodate the restaurant. And I also mentioned, of course, the dumpster enclosure. We'll be dealing with all of those issues, but the parking will get us over the big hurdle here to know that this use is indeed viable. And we would ask for your approval of this variance request this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David. All right, I guess we'll do a motion to formally close the hearing and to deliberate. Can we have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll move
part?
to close.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, call the roll.
Hey, Mayor Newton,
Yes.
Chief and Gore,
Yes.
Councilwoman Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Joel,
Yes.
Ms. O'Brien,
Yes.
Ms. Huban,
Yes.
Ms. Patiri,
Yes.
Ms. Wessner,
Yes.
Mr. Lebarsky.
Yes.
Okay, so that closes the hearing part. Now we're into deliberation. Any thoughts, comments, discussion regarding the application? You can just jump right in.
Yeah, I think this is a really great project. I love that you're keeping all the historic stuff in the building. And I think an inn in town is a really great idea. The only issue I have, which based on everything tonight, I don't think is an issue, but I just want to say it. Pre-COVID, I used that commuter lot and it was always full before 7 a.m. So the 6 or 7 spots, the overnight spots, would probably overlap with that, which concerns me. It sounds like you're looking to get the private spots in the neighbors' parking spaces, or you could even do the spots in the new garage across town, which would be great. I just would try to avoid using that lot because it's definitely heavily used.
Okay, anyone else?
Totally agree with you. I think avoiding some of the, obviously there's going to be some parking snafus and drop off and stuff. I like what Mr. Rutherford just said about the ride share services or leaving cars at family's house. Obviously it's probably going to be people with some tie to Ridgewood coming to stay there. people are gonna be walking, like you said, with one bag. They're gonna have one rolling bag back and forth if they have to walk from the garage under the underpass. I don't think it's absolutely out of bounds if they're permitted, if that's something worked out with the village. But I actually think it's a fantastic idea. I know it's a first.
I have to agree. I think it's a great idea. It's perfect for that side of town. It'd be great for the west side to bring more people over there. So I think it's a great idea.
So since we're just talking, I mean, we're specifically discussing a parking variance, is that accurate?
Yep, that's the only part we're dealing with. We're just doing
Okay.
comments, deliberation.
Okay.
And Rich, I would only say to the board that you can consider it under C2, C1 based on a hardship, or C2 based upon the positive criteria outweighing any negative criteria. And that's the element you have to consider.
So wait, Chris, are we looking, I'm trying to pull up my variance in front. Are we looking at a C1 or C2 parking?
Well, I didn't hear any testimony on either, and maybe Marianne can chime in, but you have a building that's a historic building with pre-existing non-parking availability. That may be a hardship for the type of building. And you have what could be considered as a beneficial use outweighing any negative criteria that may be associated with it.
So what is can somebody expand on that C1, C2?
Marianne, you want to explain the hardship one and then the regular C2 variance for?
I think that I think because the board members, I mean, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, but I think that board members typically don't do variance relief like this. So I think it's important that they understand what exactly the variance relief
I agree.
would fall on. So
Typically,
we give crib sheets to everyone.
yes. I try and put some of that in the positive and negative criteria and list that in the variance type. So the C1 is the traditional hardship, where traditionally there's some physical characteristic that makes you not be able to meet the standards that are required. And usually it's a setback that you can't meet because maybe there's a steep slope, or maybe there's trees you want to preserve. So you're not gonna place the new building at that location. Various reasons that are basically hard lines based on physical restraints. And in this case, it can be looked at as a C1 variance. The hardship is something that's a physical existing condition that you can't change. Usually it was always related to like the shape of a lot or something like that. And it's rare to have that. It's usually that there's an application that someone's asking for something just over and above outside the scope for other reasons. But in this case, there appears to be, I agree with Chris, a C1 variance because it's a historic building that doesn't have parking and can't have parking. Then the paragraph for C2 was added because almost every variance that's granted isn't because of just a physical hardship. It's because of something else. And those other reasons are balanced for looking at where the benefits outweigh the detriments of granting that variance. And do the benefits in this case of having an inn and a new restaurant in a vital part of downtown and filling the vacant building, do those benefits outweigh the fact that there's no parking on site? And you can look at that as, yes, they do, because we've been shown that there's other alternatives for parking off-site. Just because they're not on site doesn't mean they don't satisfy the criteria. And so that's essentially a summary of those points and the difference between the two. If that helps, I hope for the record, that should address that. If you think.
Also, Marianne's report has it listed on page 2, and she does provide that information to us usually when there's variance relief requested. Okay, further discussion? Susan, were you going to continue or?
No. You know what, actually, because my when I had that technical difficulty earlier, I had to switch the device that had all my documents. So I've been on back and forth with all my documents. And so I have Mary Ann's report in front of me, but just didn't go to that page. But I thought it was just beneficial to walk through it with everyone because it's not something typically we do.
And I apologize. Normally, I don't say anything on topics because it is the responsibility of the applicant to say those things. In this case, because of the way the proposal's been divided, you don't seem to have a planner here, so I can speak to that. So it's no problem.
Yeah, no apologies. I just wanted to make sure that the record that was provided, which I believe is sufficient for the board to make a decision, was supplemented with the legal principles that, as you said, Mary Ann, usually the applicant will provide, but in this bifurcation, the board knows the guideposts now.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of funny because David Rutherford usually throws those in there, and it's funny because I didn't hear it from him either. Okay, so the bifurcation just kind of threw us for a little. Okay, it's all good.
Any other comments, questions? I think it's a great plan. I think it fits C1, C2. Again, the hardship, historic building, no parking on site. There never was, never will be. So I think there's workarounds for that. And then, I see the benefits, an inn and a nice restaurant and bar. It's exciting. It's something that's being done. It's going to improve the neighborhood around there business-wise and community-wise. And any detriments, I think you can work around and adapt. I think the business owner has an incentive to make sure it works. And I think you can make it work these days. And there are many ways to make it work. I'm probably one of those people that could walk from the garage over, I wouldn't mind that. I think a lot of people like to walk the town, and you probably can enlarge that zone for the parking. But I think it's a great thing, and I'm in favor of the parking variance.
Yeah, so, and I just want to focus on the parking variance because I love this project. I think I loved it from the moment, I would never talk about it, but from the moment I met Jonathan. So I think that for me, I think the benefits just substantially outweigh the detriments, substantially outweigh the detriments. I just think that that it's a hardship as well. It does meet both C1, C2 criteria. So I would actually, if nobody has anything else, I would actually just make a motion to approve it based on both meeting the criteria of C1 because of the hardship aspect and C2 as it meets both. Is that okay? Can we do that, C1 and C2?
Yeah.
Good, okay. Then I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, was that Melanie or Diane?
I was muted. Diane was unmuted, so it can be Diane.
All right, it's Diane. You
Okay.
priority, so you second. So it's a motion to approve the parking variance based upon C1 and C2 criteria. Call the roll, Jane?
Okay, Mayor Newton,
Yes.
Chief and Gore,
Yes.
Councilwoman Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Joel,
Yes.
Ms. O'Brien,
Yes.
Ms. Huban,
Yes.
Ms. Patiri,
Yes.
Ms. Westner,
Yes.
Mr. Lubarsky.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Congratulations.
You.
Thank you so much.
Might I ask the board can we get a date this evening for the site plan? If the board, please.
Jane,
Yeah. Would February 16 work?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'll consult with Mr. Rosenberg. He's aware of the need for the changes to the plan. I don't want to take the time to do that now. But yes, if we could carry, because Mr. Martin, I did notice for the site plan as well as the variance. So if we could announce that date now, that will preserve my notice, and that will give us adequate time to get the plans in at least 10 days prior to that hearing so that the board and its professionals can review them.
Gordon,
Absolutely.
just text me.
Mr. Rutherford, this matter will be carried without any further notice required of the applicant. in terms of the site plan portion of the application until February 16th, 2021, with agreed upon no prejudice to the board in any manner, correct?
That's correct. Yes, Mr. Martin.
And can you, I'm after you for transcripts all the time, but when this one's generated, can you forward it to me?
Certainly. Yes.
Good. Thank you, David.
All right, thank you, David. Excellent presentation per
I
usual.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your favorable review of the application. So good evening to everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda will be Historic Preservation Commission review for Piccolo Bistro, 29 Chestnut Street, Block 3805, Lot 20.01, proposed pergola style awnings. And is there a gel actus?
Okay, so Piccolo Bistro is there.
Okay,
All right, they're in. They're coming in.
okay. Okay, just so the board's aware, we don't have, HPC doesn't have enough members, and we're hearing these in place of the HPC, so most of you have done this before, so we're gonna do it again. Okay, Piccolo Bistro, can you unmute?
Hi, hello.
Hi, can you state your name and address, please?
My name is Baron Actis. My mom is the owner. Her name is Jael Actis. We live at 300 Kinderknack Road, River Edge, New Jersey.
Okay. All right. You can make your presentation. Just tell us about Piccolo Bistro and what you're doing. I think they just muted to discuss something. When you're ready.
Could you get the spelling of the names when you get a moment?
Okay, sure. Okay, Piccolo Bistro, if you can unmute again.
Hi. So we're a Italian restaurant business.
Yep, can you just spell your first name just so we have it?
My name or my mom's name?
Your name first and then your mom's name.
My first name is Baran and the last name is Aktas.
Okay.
My mom's first name is Jale and the last name is Aktas.
Okay. Okay, so do you work with her there? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you can make your presentation.
Okay. So the plan is to make an awning in the front that would. We have an old awning, but the plan is to change that with the new one for. We can't use the old awning we have because the rain, whenever it rains, the water goes through it, and the customers with COVID and whatnot, they don't really want to be inside. And yeah, the machine is 20 years old or so. It was there before we bought it too. So we just need a new awning and something that covers the rain and that we could use also in the winter too. Since with COVID, as you know, not a lot of people really want to sit inside. And the private patio and this awning would help us make better use of it.
Okay, just you want to explain like the colors and the size, you know, is it could be the same?
Drink.
Rank, yeah, the ivory color like this.
Okay, the color is going to be ivory. Size,
Aynı same. Aynı büyüklükte. Same.
The size is going to be the
Same.
same as the old awning.
Yeah.
The color is going to be, it's an ivory colored awning.
All numaraların hepsi yollandı onların zaten.
I believe the.
Söyle onu.
I believe the awning company, they sent all the numbers and whatnot. I believe you guys should have it.
I mean, we have picture.
Which owning company.
Well, we don't know the exact measurements, you know, it's just a question. This is your opportunity to tell us why it's a good idea, why it harmonizes with the neighborhood. So just, it's gonna be ivory colored, it's a muted color. Chris, did we need to swear them in at all, or? You were muted, Chris.
Hepsi company.
Not for this proceeding.
Okay.
No, we don't, yeah. So I just want to tell everybody we have a paper, it's the document from the awning company, and there's a fabric sample on it. If you can see it, it's on page 6, so it's showing us the color.
Yep.
Her şey, yani her şey company var, o yolluyor.
Bir şey yok başka.
Duyuyorlar şu anda.
Give me 1 second.
Okay, Baron, do you have any additional input at all?
I'm sorry, we didn't really come prepared. We didn't know we were supposed to speak to that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah,
That's
sometimes,
fine.
you know, someone comes, they tell us what their business is, what they're doing, you know, how it's, you know, how it's a good idea, and then, you know, why you chose to do what you're doing. Is this gonna go out any more farther towards the right of way, or is it gonna be exactly the same footprint?
Yeah, that was my question too. Yeah. Does it go back through that right away?
Bir dakika onu sormuyorum. Bu I'm asking right now. Give me 1 second. Bu şey arka tarafına geçecek mi yoksa her şey aynı mı?
Aynı.
Yeah, everything is the same. It shouldn't be going back to the right of way. It should be the same as before, just a new awning.
Is it retractable?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's exactly, it appears to be the same as the original in size. You're just missing that front scalloping. You're not putting the scalloping on?
All size,
The size and everything should be same, yeah.
So I'm asking, are you going to put the scallop edge back along the front of it, the face? Or is it going to just end with that sharp edge? You see on the original, if you go back to the original, the yellow awning, you have the little scalloped edge. You have that little piece that drops down, and it has Piccolo Bistro on it. Are you going to? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just asking if you go back to the other picture so I could see.
Into it.
Yeah, I think that's Mary Ann doing the pictures.
Yeah, you see. Okay, you see there's the face of it.
Yes.
Yeah, same.
Yes.
It's going to be.
So you're going to have, so your new awning is going to be identical, and you're going to have Piccolo Bistro
Yeah.
on it too?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're going to have the scallop edging on it. You're just not showing it in your rendering. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I love it. It's really pretty. I like the color too.
How can you do the scalloped edging though? Because I thought this was made out of aluminum.
No, it's the fabric.
The frame was aluminum.
The frame
Oh,
is
just
aluminum.
The frame is aluminum. Okay. And
There's a fabric sample, Lorraine, on page 6 of the packet with the awning company. It's a fabric. So this was.
I don't have the same packet you do. I don't have a fabric sample.
Yeah, it's on this, what we're looking at right now. If you see what we're looking at right now, do you have that picture with the car in front of the awning?
Yes.
You scroll to page 6.
I get my packets, it's a physical packet. I'm not on.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. All right.
But there was
So
a
it-
sample showing the fabric texture and color, and
It's a page, and it's page 6 in the packet. And
then
that,
the metal.
Okay, to me, it looks white. Is it white or is it?
No, it's gonna be ivory. I think that's just the yellow should be.
Before the yellow, when we change, it will be ivory color, beige color. Beige color.
It's definitely a beige color. How does it look next to the other buildings? Did you hold it up to the other buildings just to see, is it matching your window trim? Is that color fabric matching anything? So you see,
Excuse me.
is it? I'm just asking because the fabric I can see the fabric color. I see it. It's really pretty. It's classic. And but
Mayor, I mean, if you look at the surrounding buildings, it appears that everything is white or off-white. The awning colors are not necessarily the same, but actually yellow would have been the standout on that street.
Yeah.
Whereas the beige actually blends in more. So, you know.
Yeah, that's why I agree. I think the yellow was the standout. The yellow's kind of cute, but it's not, it's their choice, right? Yeah, that's why I was actually asking about the scallop because I thought that the scallop makes it.
It's a nice touch.
Pretty, yeah, it's a nice touch.
I have a question on this, just just to clarify too. In this drawing, and you can probably see my cursor, it doesn't see, I didn't think it was retractable when I looked at this because it looks like there's these metal columns coming down onto these pillars. It looks a little more modern in aluminum. That's why I'm curious if do you actually need this? And it looks like this is more of a permanent, you know, kind of permanent column for the awning.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
It is, because if you look at the, I guess the awning company, there were a few pages and there's a page at the top, it says product highlights, and there's two pictures. The picture on the right shows it when it's fully retracted. So you see the frame. The fabric is retracted, but you can see the frame.
It looks like the frame stays there. And it says it's motorized retraction, so it must, just the fabric goes back.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so you're saying the fabric is rolling in and the frame is remaining. Oh, that's interesting. I see what I understand what Jim is saying. Oh, that makes, you know what, that actually makes sense. That's why there's that piece in the middle, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Does that bother anyone? Doesn't bother me.
I don't have a problem with it.
So Mayor, I'm not sure that they're based on the retractable system, because I was reviewing that too, that there is a scalloped edge. Maybe they're adding the scalloped edge onto the framework.
Right. Yeah, which is
because it
typically
won't
what
be able to
happens.
retract. Yeah, it won't be able to retract with the scalloped edge.
Right.
Unless the scalloped edge is broken at that point.
Or it's put onto the front and maybe the applicant knows, are they putting it on the front afterwards? So
oh, you're right.
How is that going to look if they retract that open and have the scalloped? I don't think it's there. And where is the visibility for the restaurant? So where is their name going to be printed on the fabric would be my question. Just
so in other words, Debbie, you're saying that the entire rectangular of the frame stays there and only the fabric goes in.
Yeah.
Or do we think that the exterior part of the frame that's running along the outside edge of the fabric is going in? How do we see that?
I think it's just the fabric.
Yeah, if you look at product highlights, on that page with product highlights, it shows it when fully retracted.
All right.
The frame's still there.
So that's why I don't think there's a scalloped edge unless they're adding something on after, which I think it would look really strange if you had the roof gone and then some material hanging.
Definitely.
So maybe the applicant and the owner know where do they plan on putting the name of the restaurant?
Right. Where? So do you hear what the board member is asking? currently the name of your restaurant is on the awning trim, the yellow trim. And this awning that you are proposing, you can't do that.
I think they muted. Baron, can you hear us?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm explaining to my parents. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
And Rich, do you have BARA for Barra?
BARAN.
Okay.
Yeah. You guys see the all the way to the top, on top of the awning? That's where the name is going to be, they said. That structure right up there? Yeah, you're on it.
Okay.
The name would be there.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Will that be ivory or will that be brown like it shows in the proposed picture?
I think the leather brown.
I
I'm so sorry, you know, I'm Piccolo Bistro, but my English not perfect, and then my son helped me. Sorry about this.
No, don't apologize. You're fine. Please
Sorry.
don't apologize. Nope, it's fine.
You're doing fine. Will that be a brown background and letters on the brown background, or will that be ivory?
Already colored the, how you call the fabric? Same color, but you know, I
So
don't understand.
It will be beige, that piece that is brown now.
Oh, the beige.
Will
Yeah,
actually be beige.
Yes, beige.
Okay, so you're painting that spot. You're painting that the same color as the awning.
I think the painting, painting the name, right? You calling, you asking the name Piccolo Bistro?
No, Baron.
Background.
Baron. Can we put
sorry.
Baron back? Okay, Baron. What we want to know is above the awning, what color will that be? Will that be brown or will it be ivory?
Ivory. It will be ivory.
So what we'll see is we're going to see a monochromatic scheme where the top band is also ivory. So that if we're looking at the building, we're looking at ivory from the top, right, running right down to the awning. And then what color will Piccolo Bistro be written in?
Brown. It's going to be brown.
Okay, understood. Okay, so I think we need to also, for historic preservation, I think we need to see that layout as well. I mean, we could certainly give blessing to the awning, but I think that the question is whether or not we're seeing the whole picture here.
Yeah.
Which we want,
I mean, the
right?
application was just for the awning. It should have included a sign too, probably. So what the mayor is saying is, you know, we could address the awning, but we can't really address the sign because we don't know what's proposed or going to be put there. I'm just trying to think. Chris, what's the best way can we review and discuss the awning and then just have them come back next time for a sign?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You follow what I'm saying, Baron?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
'Cause we can't approve something like signage if we don't know what it looks like or what it is.
Yeah.
You know, historic
Yeah, I
area.
understand.
All right, board, anyone have comments regarding the awning proposal or any other questions of Baron?
I just have one comment. I mean, nothing, it's just, I have an awning at my house. It's striped. And the part of the awning that has a lighter color and stripe, it gets dirty and dark so quickly. Like, I don't know if the awning company has any suggestions on how to keep it clean, if it's even possible, but I would think, unfortunately, that this color awning is going to get really dirty very quickly. So that's my only comment. I mean, if that's the color you want to have, that's fine, but I don't know if you've even thought about that. Because I know when I'm getting a new awning, I'm getting a darker color because, you know, it got dirty very quickly.
I'll give a ditto to that. We actually replaced we had to cut out the whole front of our awning that didn't retract because it was so filthy. We actually had to have the whole thing cut out.
For the color, we were told that for the top, that there was a protective layer that
So
would
they
help with
say
the dirt.
it's good
That's what
based
the awning
on-
company had told us, that there would be.
Okay. All right.
And maybe this is easier to replace. It might be just almost like fabric, like not a whole
Yeah.
awning that has to be replaced.
Sure.
But, yeah, that's their judgment call on the color on that. Any other comments, questions? Okay. What's everyone's general take on it? I'm favorable to it. I mean, as long as it's the same size, doesn't go out any further, and the color kind of matches the neighborhood. It's not too loud or anything like that. And then for a sign, they have to come back in for that, show us what they have for that.
I agree. I think that it's fine. It's just monochromatic and it's fine. And we'll look for this sign at a later date.
Yeah, I'm agreeable. I think, it fits right into the neighborhood and it's a nice upgrade,
Okay. We don't vote on this, so we just kind of by consensus.
Yeah. Anyone have any negative comment or? Okay. All right.
Chair, you need to, if you could, send the letter and make sure you reserve the sign aspect as not being approved at this time.
Okay, sure. Jane, can you take care of that for me?
Okay, yep.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, thank you, Baron, for your time, and thank you to your mom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay. All right, our next item will be a stormwater management plan. Public hearing on the stormwater management plan as an amendment to the master plan, review of the proposed ordinance to amend chapter 190 of the village code to adopt new stormwater management regulations consistent with the NJDEP requirements. Okay, Chris, are you gonna are you gonna be handling this, presenting?
Yes, both Marianne and I worked on this. As you said, there's two components of it. There's the stormwater element of the management plan, and there is a revisions to the municipal stormwater ordinances. Both are items that have been dictated that municipalities adopt, particularly the village, because we're a tier A community. We're a little bit behind the time frame. They want it done by March 2nd, 2021. It'll be adopted close to that.
A special public meeting to get it done.
I wouldn't waste the effort, Mayor.
Okay, good.
Thank you. The village has been kind of busy with the pandemic and a few other projects, but we have gotten it done. Once this has gone through the planning board and the village council, we have to send it over to the county planning board for their approval also.
Okay, good.
Okay, do you want to take us through the plan at all, like in a brief summary, or?
Geez.
Well, just as a starter, as Chris and Marianne know, and I think many board members know at this point, the state actually supplied a form resolution, a form ordinance, excuse me. And it's very basic changes that each community, in this case, a tier A community, needs to adopt. So I think with that, Chris, you could just basically walk through what the state is requiring and how Ridgewood's going to fulfill it.
Okay. Again, this is a continuation of a process that the state DEP has been working on since I think 2002 or 3. In the time frame till current, the village has adopted a number of ordinances, basically to further the protection of stormwater. Stormwater is a big issue. A village like Ridgewood is about 96% developed. We have a stormwater collection system. It is separate from the sanitary sewer system. That's a major distinction and a very big plus for the village. However, they want the village to enact ordinances and to guide development to protect stormwater as much as possible. What the village does, if somebody increases the square footage, impervious surface square footage of their home by more than 200 square feet, we require someone to do stormwater management. That generally will result in someone having to install a seepage tank, collect the roof rain runoff, allow it to seep back into the aquifer underneath. That helps us both from the stormwater perspective and also because the village is a water company, is a groundwater aquifer supplied system. The changes that the state has is just making it a little more stricter, a little more preserving the environment, and that's what we have before you.
Marianne, did you have anything to add to it?
I do not, especially since it's stormwater, definitely engineering. The only thing I will add, since we didn't mention, is that the stormwater plan is a component, an element of the master plan. And by doing this in a way that's consistent with the state's requirements, it also meets the municipal land use law statutory requirements as well, and is a required element of the master plan.
I think the both of you have checked my boxes on my chart here. I think you did a great job. So Chair, I believe, and Chris and Marianne could correct me if I'm wrong, we need to amend the master plan, which is in the planning board's domain, and then recommend to the governing body that they enact the proposed ordinance, which is being discussed.
That's correct, Chris. This ordinance for those changes has been submitted to the village manager for the next mayor and council work session.
Okay, so do we make a motion and vote on that now, Chris, or?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is Jane was very helpful with this, and I think Marianne and Chris got it out. The notice is satisfactory that there's a comment available for if anybody would like to comment tonight in the audience.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on stormwater?
Is there anyone in the audience?
There's only one person and they're not raising their hand.
And just Jane, can you confirm the notice went out as required, which we just outlined earlier in the week?
Yes, it did.
Excellent, thank you. In that light, Chair, the first step would be to amend, move to amend the master plan stormwater element, and then the next would be to address the ordinance.
Okay. Do we have a motion to do that?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
Who seconded?
Lorraine.
Okay, call the roll, Jane.
Okay, Mayor Knutson,
Yes.
Chief and Gore,
Yes.
Councilwoman Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Joel,
Yes.
Ms. O'Brien,
Yes.
Ms. Huban,
Yes.
Ms. Patiri,
Yes.
Barto,
Yes.
Ms. Wessner.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it's approved. All right, the next item will be adoption of minutes. We don't have those minutes, so.
Well, actually, Chairman.
Yep.
We would need to, I think that motion was to amend the master plan.
Yep.
Now the motion is to recommend to the governing body that the proposed ordinance be adopted.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was a joint motion. All right. Do we have a motion to recommend the ordinance to the governing body?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Allison. We have
I'll
second.
second. I'll second.
Okay,
All
call the
right.
roll.
Mayor Knutson,
So I think Councilwoman Reynolds and I step away from this because it's an ordinance that we'll be voting on. Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct, Mayor, and fortunately, the planning board is self-contained in the master plan issue, so you could have voted on that and you did. Thank you.
Chief and Gore,
Yes.
Mr. Joel,
Yes.
Ms. O'Brien,
Yes.
Ms. Huban,
Sorry, I was unmuting. Yes.
Ms. Patiri.
Yep.
Ms. Barto,
Yes.
Ms. Wessner,
Yes.
and Mr. Lebarsky.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we don't have the any minutes to review or approve. Is there any need for an executive session, Chris?
No.
How dramatic. Any further business, anybody? Anyone have anything to discuss? Do we
I
have
just had a quick thing. I mean, I was gonna bring it up, but I forgot. So the meeting that Garber Square is going on is February 16th. Probably in other years it would matter, but that's February break for the schools. I assume nobody's going away. It probably doesn't matter this year.
Well, we're all
Definitely
remote, so
doesn't
if
matter.
anybody's going to Cancun, they can just log into Zoom for the hour.
Very smart.
no campaign here?
I mean, I want to go away, but
I just want to go on the record and say it's really cold in Village Hall. It's so cold here.
oh, are you really in Village Hall?
When you told me that she wasn't really there, and then she told me that she really was, I thought it was a secret, so I was shutting my mouth.
Oh, no, I had a 6:30 meeting and I didn't think that I would get done, so I brought my laptop. You see, I'm really here. I'm here.
Okay. Because the last few village council meetings, she just has the background of village council.
It's a trick.
That's just a really good virtual background.
Yeah.
But I think that's Dylan's photo. It actually has the monitors aren't in that. It's the actual those prints from Jacques, right? Anyway.
Okay, any other further business, anyone? Okay, do we have a motion to end the meeting?
I'll motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, we're done.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
All right.
Diane, what were you munching on
Thanks, guys.
earlier?
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Jane.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
M&Ms.
Susan, don't
Bye.
walk home with the foxes. You
M&Ms.
gotta be careful.
Oh, M&Ms. I said, I knew you were eating something. M&Ms. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Watch those foxes, lady. She's gonna get eaten up going.
I drove here.
Oh, there you go. I always worry.